Hi, this is John Allen, the editor of Crux. Welcome to another exclusive video feature on the Crux YouTube page. This one is brought to you by the good people at the Columban Center for Advocacy. In these video features, we try to bring you a cross section of interesting Catholic voices, personalities, movers and shakers, both here at home and around the Catholic world. And we're thrilled today to be joined by Father Bob Mosher, who is a veteran missionary in Chile. He is one of the movers and shakers at the Columban Center for Advocacy. We're going to talk with him about an important milestone in the life of the Columban community, and also the fascinating subject of cross-border, cross-cultural evangelization, with a particular emphasis on the U.S.-Mexico border. So, Father Bob, thank you so much for being with us here today.
You're welcome, John. It's good to be with you.
All right, now, before we get into the actual work of the Center for Advocacy, it's important to note that it is an outgrowth of the Missionary Society of St. Columban, which is a religious order in the life of the church that was founded in Ireland in 1916 and given official Vatican approval, kind of the good housekeeping seal of approval from Rome in 1918, which means that here in 2017, you are smack dab in the middle of your centennial. So let's begin by talking a little bit about the origins of the Missionary Society of St. Columban, and then bring it to today. What do you think the distinct charism of the society is and its contribution to the church's work of evangelization in the here and now?
Well, John, it's a great time for us to look back on and give thanks to God for 100 years of fantastic experiences and a shared charism. I think over the years I have grown to appreciate our Irish origins as giving us a sort of automatic sensibility for the plight of the poor and the oppressed. Even those of us who are not Irish by birth, and in fact we come from many different countries, but we have been imbued with this tone, this approach, this perspective of choosing to be among the vulnerable and the poor in all the countries we go to, which first of all was China. That's what we were formed for in the first place. But over the years, in each of the countries that we've gone to, we've stuck it through the hard times of war and military oppression, dictatorships, disasters of a natural kind, as well as social disasters. We've been able to stick it out with the people. The people have appreciated that. And it's been among the most vulnerable in each society that the Columbans have chosen to give witness to gospel values and accompany the formation of Catholic communities in these countries.
Now, here's a question I always like to ask when I'm speaking to religious. Pope Francis is, of course, himself a religious. He is a Jesuit. Do you think that gives him a special sensibility about the charism and the contributions and the importance of religious in the church today?
Yes, it could be. It's a kind of a speculative question, but I appreciate the fact that as a Jesuit, he brings to his ministry the pastoral experiences that have been reflected upon in a very Ignatian sort of way that pays attention to the signs of the times and the movements of the Spirit. Yes, I think I would answer yes to your question. Religious congregations do have a contribution to play even when assuming leadership and service roles in the church.
All right. Well, speaking of signs of the times, obviously, in the United States of the here and now, one of the towering signs of the times is immigration, the politics of immigration, the human realities of immigration, the fact that there is this huge movement of peoples across our southern border. And of course, I know that the Columbans have some experience in terms of ministry on the border and and to the south of that, of course. And we'll talk about your own personal experience in a moment. But what lessons do you think the society and the Center for Advocacy can pass along about the promise and the peril of cross-cultural evangelization along the border?
Well, I don't know about the peril, but there seems to be plenty of promise, especially for the U.S. church, as we are enriched by these examples of faith that people depending entirely upon God and on God's grace, seek to undertake great difficulties in order to escape from violence and poverty that, in most cases, we have had a hand in promoting as a country, as a powerful country, economically, militarily, and politically. So it's a great opportunity, I think. I see more promise than peril in the growing diversity of our church as we welcome these Catholics from other countries into our own society and our own church. And personally, here at the border, we are sometimes called upon to welcome these refugees even in our own buildings and on an emergency basis, like back in 2014, when we had many coming up from Central America. Under the leadership of Ruben Garcia, the founder of Annunciation House, he was able to establish 14 emergency refugee centers that ran for several months, including our Columban Mission Center, of which I'm the director here in El Paso. And I can tell you, we were worried about whether we could handle so many people, but the support from local Catholics was immense. Volunteers came out of the woodwork. And it turned out to be such an enriching experience, getting to know these people who have such deep faith and were expecting us to act as human beings as well as Christians and just welcome them as we did. It was like coming to the realization that people are people everywhere. And just as we treat the refugees here, they would certainly treat us the same way if we went to their countries as well. It's just what human beings do. And it's a great opportunity to live the faith that it really was a very rich encounter, so much so that in our reflection afterwards with the volunteers, we often asked ourselves, what were we worried about? I mean, what a privilege to be able to accompany people at these moments.
Well, that certainly has been my experience too. I mean, I have spent some time in Central America, and I have to say the atmosphere of welcome you run into there is just amazing. But on the peril side of the ledger, Father, since you have such direct contact with people who are entering the country under a variety of set of circumstances, let me ask you this: this isn't probably the most immigrant friendly moment in American political history. Do you find the people with whom you have pastoral contact on a regular basis, does that frighten them? I mean, is there a climate of sort of fear and anxiety created by some of the political rhetoric and so on about what the future might hold?
Well, I'm from Massachusetts, so it'd be interesting to compare what I've seen in Massachusetts, which I visit twice a year, and what we see here at the border. I think in a city like El Paso, which is right next to the Mexican city of Juarez, a good percentage of the population are descended from immigrants of recent years and from Mexico. So there's a sympathy more than a fear and an appreciation of people who come from Latin American countries, although they do come here from other countries as well. But I notice when I'm back home in Massachusetts, the fear is much more intense. Especially in parts of Massachusetts that are more rural, like Cape Cod. That's my home area. And I've noticed that even my relatives and friends are asking themselves questions like, who's going to feed all these people? And how are we going to handle this? Whereas in El Paso, it's not a problem. It's not even a question that bothers anyone. Even the local supermarkets were donating pallets of water bottles to help us attend to the people here. Doctors and professionals were dropping by. If only people in other parts of the country could discover their own potential for overcoming these fears and meeting people as people rather than to see them as a horde of faceless numbers coming to take away what we have. It is a challenge, but less so here at the border because people don't have those fears as intensely or as often as in other parts of the country.
So is the lesson there, Father, that the better you know immigrants, the less you're going to be afraid of them?
Yes, I think that's true. And that's true in so many circumstances, John. We've seen that in history, that the roots of anti-Semitism, for example, are often found in people who had no contact and never met a Jew in their lives.
Yeah.
I think the same truth is also available to us to address this situation with migrants, that once we get to know Jose, Maria, or anybody else from another country and hear their story, and begin to experience a personal relationship with individuals, we become more aware of our own prejudices and ready to live in a different way, thanks to God's mercy and the opportunity we have always of living our faith in a more humble and teachable way.
All right, Father Bob, we are almost out of time, but very quickly, I know that you spent 29 years as a missionary in Chile. Can you I know this is probably impossible because you're talking about a huge chunk of your life, but just in a couple of sentences, can you express what the impact of that was on you and what you took away from it?
Well, again, it was such a privilege. I was able to be with people in the darkest chapter of their history, including the Pinochet dictatorship. And the church was so forthright in its opposition to injustice that I learned a lot. I learned a great deal about how precious life is and of the great vocation we have to be able to be on the side of people who need to be defended and accompanied in their darkest hours.
You excited about Pope Francis heading to Chile in January?
Yes, many of my friends are looking forward to it. It's going to be a very interesting visit, and especially with the overlay of being an Argentinian. Argentinians and Chileans, there's always kind of a frisson of communication there because Argentinians are very extroverted and Chileans are more reflective. So it's going to be an interesting visit.
Yeah, and of course, some of those Argentinians are still smarting by the fact that Pope Francis hasn't yet gone there. But one day, one day. Well, listen, Father Bob, I wish we had all day to keep talking because this has been a fascinating conversation. But unfortunately, we don't. If you want more information on the Columban Center for Advocacy, you can just Google it. You will find their homepage, and there you will find all kinds of resources about the fascinating and important work that they're doing. So please check that out. We will continue to bring you more exclusive video features here on the Crux YouTube page. So keep checking us out. And until we have the opportunity to speak again, I am John Allen. You have a fantastic day.